Israel didn't just survive the desert, it rewired it. We're talking about a country that took one of the most unforgiving landscapes on earth, the Negev Desert, and poured billions of liters of seawater into it. Not metaphorically. Literally. In a $3 billion project that took over 15 years, Israel engineered a man-made river system through terrain where rainfall is a rare event and temperatures routinely top 115 degrees Fahrenheit. This wasn't an easy win. It was a brutal, high-stakes.
If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Your feedback helps shape what we cover next, and you being here keeps the conversation going. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.
Years-long transformation. And it changed the nation. The project kicked off in 2000, backed by the kind of funding and long-term vision most countries only dream about. The goal? Bring water from the Mediterranean Sea into the desert and turn it into something no one believed possible, a sustainable agricultural and living zone. To do that, the first step was to wrestle with the desert itself. That meant confronting a constantly shifting, hostile terrain. Engineers used high-resolution satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar just to understand where they could even begin building. The sand wasn't stable. The dunes moved. The land couldn't hold weight. So before a single drop of water could move, they had to literally re-engineer the earth. Bulldozers leveled dunes. Water was injected into the sand to bind it, then compressed into a surface solid enough to hold industrial machinery. That alone took years and hundreds of crews, machines, and around-the-clock labor under relentless heat. The desert had to be subdued before it could be rebuilt. Once that groundwork was set, the focus shifted to the real backbone of the operation. Over 12,000 kilometers of canals. Not pipes. Canals. This was open, flowing infrastructure that stretched like veins across a dead landscape. Engineers didn't just dig channels. They had to design for slope, pressure, and volume, all while preventing collapse. That meant lining the canals with concrete and reinforcing the sides with vegetation to fight erosion and support water flow. The entire system was built with control in mind. Spillways, aqueducts, bridges, and gates allowed for constant adjustment, redirecting water where needed and preventing disaster when heavy flows hit. Every part of the system was designed not just to move water, but to master it. But seawater doesn't grow crops. That's where desalination came in. Israel's approach to desalination wasn't just high-tech, it was multi-layered and precise. First, the water was filtered mechanically. Then it went through nanofiltration, reverse osmosis, and chemical balancing. Each step stripped away salt, impurities, and harmful elements, turning raw ocean water into something that could hydrate crops, power homes, and sustain life. Sensors monitored the process in real time, tracking everything from salinity to chemical balance. It wasn't enough to clean the water. It had to be perfect, and it had to stay that way. Then came the moment everything changed. The first successful water flow through the canal system wasn't just an engineering milestone, it was a national turning point. A desert that had once been written off as barren, unusable land suddenly surged with life. And with it, the return of agriculture. Farmers came back. Vineyards were replanted. Orchards bloomed. Crops took root in soil that, just a few years earlier, was dry and cracking under the sun. The transformation wasn't slow, it was immediate and visible. Villages returned. High-tech farms took shape. Communities re-emerged around a water source that didn't exist a generation ago. This wasn't just an irrigation system. It was a full-scale environmental reboot. And it worked. What kept the momentum going was innovation, especially Israel's now famous water efficiency methods. Drip irrigation became standard. It minimized water waste, delivering exactly the amount each plant needed with almost no loss. Underground aquifer recharge systems also came online, refilling natural reserves and creating long-term water security in an area where drought used to be a way of life. And it didn't stop at agriculture. This system powered entire communities. It created jobs, stabilized food production, and built infrastructure where there was once nothing but heat and sand. With water came electricity, roads, and economic growth. The Negev Desert wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Behind the scenes, the system never stopped being monitored. Thousands of sensors tracked flow rates, pressure, water quality, and structural stability 24/7. These weren't backup systems, they were core to keeping the entire project functional over time. If a canal started to leak, or a pressure reading fell outside the normal range, the system flagged it immediately. Adjustments were made in real time. It was dynamic, living infrastructure, and it had to be, Because in a place like this, one failure could undo years of progress. What makes this story even more compelling is that it wasn't driven by abundance. Israel doesn't have endless natural water sources. It has scarcity, drought, and a desert that covers over half its land. But by investing in research, engineering, and long-term sustainability, the country turned one of its greatest weaknesses into a strength. And now, it's exporting knowledge and water technology around the world. Countries facing similar environmental crises have taken note. Israel's Desert River Project is now a model for regions battling climate change, freshwater shortages, and rapidly expanding populations. It's proof that advanced environmental engineering isn't just theoretical. It's possible, it works, and it changes lives. That's what makes this project so significant. It's not just about moving water. It's about shifting what we think is possible. When an entire country proves that a desert can support crops, villages, and infrastructure because of technology, not in spite of it, it sets a new bar for global sustainability. The world is facing a water crisis. Populations are rising. Freshwater sources are drying up. Climate patterns are shifting. And yet, here's a real-world example of what happens when engineering, planning, and innovation come together with purpose. Not to make things slightly better but to completely rewrite the future. From 2000 to the first flowing canal, to the first crop harvested from soil that once rejected life, this project is a living case study in what human ingenuity can accomplish when it refuses to accept natural limitations. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fast. But it worked. And now, the Negev isn't a desert in decline. It's a region in rebirth, powered by seawater, engineered by vision, sustained by technology. If this story surprised you, if it made you rethink what's possible, let us know in the comments. Hit like if you think this kind of innovation should be the global standard, and share this with anyone who needs to see what real transformation looks like. And if you want to keep hearing stories like this where human effort actually reshapes the world, make sure you're subscribed. Because this is just one story. There's so much more happening. Because when you look at what Israel did in the Negev desert, you're not just seeing a water project. You're watching a country rewrite the rules of survival. Let's be real. Most nations in Israel's position would have backed down. The Negev makes up over half the country's land, and for generations, it was essentially untouchable. Scorching temperatures, unstable terrain, and no natural water sources worth mentioning. It was dry, hot, and brutally unforgiving. Turning that into something productive, that wasn't just ambitious. It bordered on insane. And yet, Israel didn't just take on the challenge, they went all in. We're talking about a complete overhaul of the landscape, not metaphorically, physically. You can't just build canals in a desert the way you would anywhere else. You have to fight the land first. Sand isn't stable, it shifts, it collapses, it refuses to cooperate. So they stabilized it. Bulldozers flattened dunes. Engineers injected water into the ground to bind the sand. Crews compacted it to withstand the pressure of heavy machinery. This wasn't a quick job, it was a years-long war against nature. And they won. Then came the 12,000 kilometers of canals, an almost unthinkable scale. These weren't just trenches filled with water. They were precision-engineered corridors designed for flow rate, durability, and long-term management. Each canal had to account for slope, weather, erosion, and shifting ground. Concrete linings weren't enough, they added vegetation to reinforce the structure and prevent collapse. Everything was planned down to the millimeter. And here's where it gets even more intense. Building the canals was just step one. Because seawater alone doesn't do anything for a desert. It has to be cleaned meticulously. So Israel built state-of-the-art desalination plants that didn't just filter the water. They restructured it. Nanofiltration removed microscopic contaminants. Reverse osmosis took out the salt. Chemical balancing restored safe mineral content. What came out the other end wasn't just usable water, it was high-grade, safe for humans, irrigation-ready fresh water. Every single liter, tracked and tested in real time by a network of sensors. That's how exact this process had to be. One mistake, one imbalance, and entire crops or communities could suffer. And once the water started flowing, that's when the real transformation kicked in. You had communities that had all but disappeared suddenly rebuilding themselves. Farmers returned to land their grandparents had abandoned. Vineyards stretched across what had once been dead earth. Orchards that couldn't survive a year without water now thrived, thanks to constant irrigation and advanced water distribution systems. Crops grew where nothing should have survived. And it happened fast. This wasn't some vague promise of long-term recovery. It was immediate. You could literally watch the land change before your eyes. But here's what made it sustainable. The technology didn't stop at desalination. Drip irrigation systems became the norm, not a luxury, a necessity. These systems delivered water exactly where it was needed, drop by drop, with minimal waste. No more flooding fields or guessing moisture levels. Sensors and automation ensured every plant got exactly what it needed, when it needed it. On top of that, Israel implemented underground aquifer recharge systems. These redirected excess water back into natural underground reservoirs. So not only were they using water efficiently, they were replenishing the earth while doing it. It was a closed loop, a self-sustaining, constantly monitored system. The kind of infrastructure most countries can only dream about. But the most remarkable part, it didn't just revive agriculture. It brought entire regions back to life. Villages that had been ghost towns started growing again. Infrastructure returned. Schools, clinics, tech startups, everything followed the water. Because where there's water, there's life. And where there's reliable water, there's stability. This wasn't just about farming. It was about national transformation. Israel went from water scarcity to water independence. And they didn't hoard the tech, they turned it into a blueprint for others. Countries across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East have studied the system. Some are already working on their own versions. Because the lesson here isn't just make water. It's design a system that lasts. That's the key. Longevity. Anyone can build a pipe. But keeping that pipe functional, safe, and optimized across decades. That's the difference between a miracle and a model. And Israel built a model. Every part of this project is constantly watched by an invisible network of sensors. These aren't passive systems, they actively monitor salinity, pressure, flow rates, and water quality 24/7. If something's off, the system adjusts. If something fails, engineers are alerted immediately. It's like the entire project is alive, breathing, thinking, evolving. And in a climate this harsh, that's the only way it survives. But let's not forget the bigger picture here. Climate change is accelerating. Droughts are increasing. Water scarcity isn't a regional problem anymore, it's a global crisis. And while most countries are scrambling just to maintain supply, Israel went and built one. They didn't wait for nature to give them water. They created their own. In a desert. This is what adaptation looks like. This is what it means to prepare for the future instead of waiting to be blindsided by it. It's innovation, grit, and long game thinking, all rolled into one. And yes, it came with a cost nearly $3 billion. But what that money bought wasn't just canals and filters. It bought food security. It bought community revival. It bought sovereignty. And most importantly, it bought a future. That's why this project is more than just an engineering success story. It's a message to every nation staring down water scarcity or desertification. The problem isn't your environment, it's your imagination. Because Israel didn't get lucky. They got serious. They brought in experts, spent the money, did the work, and followed through. They confronted environmental reality and reshaped it. Not with slogans, with infrastructure. And it's still evolving. Sensors are still tracking. Desalination plants are still upgrading. Farmers are still planting. People are still moving back. The project didn't end when the water started flowing, it just entered a new phase. Now, it's maintenance, growth, export, collaboration, teaching other nations how to do it. Because in the end, this isn't just Israel's story. It's a blueprint for anywhere that feels left behind by geography or climate. And in a world increasingly shaped by environmental extremes, that kind of leadership matters. So the next time you hear someone say it can't be done, whether it's growing crops in the desert or bringing life back to dead land, send them this story. Show them that someone already did it. And not in theory. In reality. What comes next is the question every water-scarce nation on earth should be asking right now. Because what Israel did in the Negev isn't just impressive, it's disruptive. It flipped the script on everything we thought we knew about what's possible in hostile environments. And let's be clear, this wasn't some flashy mega project done for international clout. It was survival. Existential. Israel's natural freshwater resources weren't just limited, they were dwindling. Traditional agriculture couldn't be sustained. Growing populations demanded more water than nature could provide. The choice was simple. Innovate or run dry. So they innovated, relentlessly. And they didn't just stop at creating water infrastructure. They redefined how water is managed. The backbone of the project is Israel's obsessive efficiency, how every drop is accounted for, every input monitored, and every system designed to withstand the extremes of a desert environment. That kind of discipline is what makes this sustainable, not just functional. Drip irrigation, for instance, might sound like a small detail. It's not. It's a revolution. In most places, irrigation still means flooding fields and hoping for the best. In Israel, water is delivered plant by plant, drop by drop, on a timer. It's controlled, calculated, and waste-proof. And it's not just conserving water, it's producing higher yields with less land. This attention to detail shows up everywhere. Those 12,000 kilometers of canals, they weren't just dug and forgotten. Every stretch is designed with graded slopes for natural flow. Every joint and junction is reinforced. Bridges and spillways weren't afterthoughts, they were planned into the network from day one. Even the vegetation along the sides, that's not just to make it look pretty. It stabilizes the banks, prevents erosion, and acts as a microclimate regulator. The system works because it has to. There's no backup supply. There's no fallback option. And that's what makes the success so powerful. It's not luxury. It's necessity-driven innovation. Then there's the tech real-time monitoring systems embedded across the infrastructure. This isn't just a smart water grid for show. It's a live, constantly evolving ecosystem of sensors and algorithms watching everything. Flow rates, pressure, salinity, contamination risk, all tracked, analyzed, and adjusted without waiting for a crisis. If a pump underperforms or a filter starts clogging, the system knows before a technician even gets there. That kind of oversight isn't just impressive, it's essential. Because when you're managing desalinated water through thousands of kilometers in a desert, failure isn't an inconvenience, it's a catastrophe. That's why this project isn't just inspiring, it's instructional. It proves that no environment is inherently doomed. What matters is how you respond to the challenges and whether you're willing to commit to long-term thinking. That means infrastructure that doesn't just work today, but can sustain generations. That means policies that support maintenance, not just construction. That means technology that evolves with climate conditions, not against them. And more importantly, it shows that the solution to environmental collapse isn't always retreat. Sometimes, it's advance. With the right tools, the right planning, and the right leadership, even the most desolate places can be reimagined. Not artificially, not unsustainably, but permanently. Just look at the Negev now. It's no longer just a stretch of sand, it's a hub of agricultural production. It's a home for solar energy farms. It's a place where families live, kids go to school, and produce gets exported to markets across the world. A literal desert turned into a contributor to global food security. And it didn't take a miracle. It took commitment. If you've been following this story, now's the time to jump in, drop a comment, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and hit like if you believe more countries should be doing this kind of work. And make sure you're subscribed for more breakdowns of the projects changing the future, one solution at a time.